Hi, guys. Welcome to tonight's live chat. I'm so glad to see you guys getting started. You're already in the chat box. It's good to see you. Thank you, Jibby Joe, for posting that message there, welcoming everyone. I just saw that Instagram is screaming at me. So let me go back and fix Instagram. That's going to take me just 1 second for those of you who see me do this almost every week. Glad to see you guys. I hope you're doing okay. I hope your Friday is starting off okay. My Friday ended up being really busy, so that's why I'm a little bit late to my own chat. And I usually don't do this on a Friday at 7:30. It's usually 6:50 for those of you who are a long time supporters. So forgive me for that, but this has been such a busy day. Hopefully it's going to get better for both of us as the weekend goes on. All right, guys, I think I have Instagram on board. Let's jump in. I don't see anything else wrong. Let's start talking about this topic. Okay, guys. Now, when I posted the thumbnail for this live chat tonight, the first thing I thought was they're going to think that we're going to talk about, them playing the victim role and getting this kind of attention and really being invalidated. Because if I talk about you guys feeling like the victim, you're going to feel like I'm invalidating you. And that's not what we're going to do. Really, tonight's live chat is centered on the reality that sometimes we have within our family, or we're in a relationship with somebody like this, or we know people on our job, in our neighborhood, who tend to go through life in this mindset of the whole world has done something wrong to me. And of course we feel this way, as just human beings in everyday life. You get mad at the person who cut you off in traffic. You get angry with the person who gets in front of you at the grocery store, and they're holding up self-checkout because they have at least 300 items that they have to scan and they keep making mistakes, right? I know I'm not the only one who has dealt with that. We get frustrated with our own families, right? We get frustrated with things we can't quite clarify on our jobs. The list goes on. We can't deal with. It's a very normal thing. But we are talking in tonight's live chat about, I feel like my camera is blurry. Is my camera blurry, guys? Wait a minute. Let me just make sure. Okay. Maybe that's a little better. That's a little better, I think. So somebody tell me if it's okay or if it's not okay. Yes, thank you, Jeremy Robinson. Hello and welcome to tonight's live chat. By the way, it's good to see you. Jeremy Robinson says the whole world is out to get them. Yeah, pretty much. We can all feel like that, right? But what we're talking about in tonight's live chat is that person, that individual who feels that you have actually caused their suffering and that everybody else in the world has caused their suffering. And how do you deal with a person who may actually have caused your suffering, but they strongly believe that you are the problem and not them? I see that in dynamics all throughout the week when I go to work. I just recently took on a new person to my practice, and training her as an intern and getting her ready to become a therapist. And one of the things that she said to me was, Miss Tamara, I really don't want to work with people who have a victim complex. They have this word on the back of their back and on the front of their chest that says victim. And I asked her why. And she says, because as I studied this in graduate school, I felt that this is the biggest problem that we have in the whole world is victimization, and the idea that everybody is being victimized at some point in their life or in some pieces of the world as it stands today. And I said, I very much agree with that. She says, I really do think it's a syndrome. Like, this is something that should be a diagnosis. And so I had to laugh as I'm starting this live chat, because it can kind of feel like a syndrome. It can feel like the person who feels that you have caused their pain, that you are the problem, that they are the ones who need the sympathy and the empathy and the love and the compassion. They tend to have, these individuals, a series of behaviors, and the series of behaviors are interesting because it tends to be anger and self-pity, there's a tendency to manifest victimhood, right? So I'm going to give you an example of this in a little bit. There's no accountability. There's no ability to look at thyself and say, okay, I just did something to my daughter, my son, and I should not have done or said that. I just created a problem, right? Or if you're kind of butting heads with your sibling, for example, your sibling's not going to say, I'm so sorry I called you that. I never liked you because I'm jealous of you, and so I know I've treated you wrong. I know I'm wrong. I'm sorry. They're not going to say that, right? That's not in their being to talk like that. That's not the angle they're going to come from, right? So there's a lack of empathy. There's no accountability whatsoever. They often see themselves as the victim. These are the individuals who do the harm. They do the dirty work. They do evil. They engage in darkness. Okay. And when they are found out, these are the individuals who cry boohoo. This is not fair to me. This shouldn't have never happened to me. How could you say that? How could you do that? How could you? Why would you? I never get in trouble with anybody. Can you just give me oh God, I have to tell you about a case I had so many years ago, but I'll tell you that in a second. But I've heard some of my clients say things like, I've never been in trouble before. Can you just forgive me? Just don't tell my probation officer I did this, or don't report me to the police. One time I had a client so many years ago, I had a client say to me when I called her out on the spot, she came in twice a week to see me because she was having really intense bipolar symptoms. She was swinging to depression, and she seemed to be really depressed and really, tired and lethargic and moody and irritable. And she was suicidal at some pieces of the time that she spent with me. And then a month later, she seemed to be getting better, but no, she became manic, right? So she was angry and hostile, and her driving was out of control. And the police had arrested her several times after she had gotten drunk and tried to drive home. Like, she was really struggling here. And I remember her coming to a session with me, and she's telling me that she not only drank a lot of alcohol, so her choice was vodka. So she downed 2 bottles of vodka, vomited for hours, very sick, very dizzy, very nauseated. Her neighbor confirmed this information to me because her neighbor found out I was her therapist, called me on the phone, left a voicemail and said, hey, Tamara, I just wanted you to know I'm her neighbor. Here's my home address so you can confirm. Here's what I saw happen last night. When my client came back to the office, this was years ago, she says to me, she says, Tamara, I was so drunk yesterday. She said, I downed some vodka and, I'm done with that alcohol. It's never going to happen to me again. And my first question to her was, where were your children? You have a 5-year-old, you have a 6-month-old, and then you have a 12-year-old. She says, I left my younger kids in the supervision of my 12-year-old. Well, there we go, Child Protective Services. So, I ended up having to report her. And here's what she did. She started crying and screaming, how could you do this to me? Please don't report me. I love my children. And I made it very clear to her that if you love your children, you wouldn't have downed 2 bottles of vodka. You wouldn't have left your baby, your 6-month-old and your 5-year-old in the hands of a 12-year-old. I do have to report this. And I want your home investigated because if you're drinking vodka, that means you have it in your home. And I says, where do you keep this? She says, I usually keep it under the cabinet, under my sink. And I remember explaining to her that is not a very intelligent place to keep vodka when you have children in a house. So, of course, I had to report her to Child Protective Services. Because I'm almost certain she's gotten behind the wheel with those kids too, and she's been drunk. But the scary part about that case, which was, I think, over 5 years ago now, what was interesting about this case was that there was no accountability. There was no responsibility. There was no empathy for her children, no empathy for the neighbor who had to clean up after her and try to get her in the house and get her in bed and, trying to make sure that her kids are safe. There was a tendency for her to do the wrong, but to manifest in some fashion in some regard, in some way, to manifest victimhood. And she felt that everybody was against her, including me, for having to call Child Protective Services, even though her behavior was the direct result of things that she had done that wasn't okay, such as drinking tons of vodka and getting drunk and adding more alcohol on top of the vodka. So these individuals tend to have, and you may have heard this, uh, the victim mentality, right? That's kind of like everybody's layman way of saying victimization. They have a victim mentality. Well, it's a consistent perception that the individual, that they are a constant victim of circumstance, even if they've caused it. You know, there are some people, and I've been in situations where I have observed certain people who are doing illegal things. One, selling drugs. Two, DUIs, getting DUIs, so getting drunk and getting behind the wheel of a car. You know, clients in my past that I've treated have done really stupid, foolish things when it came to putting their kids in the car with them and getting behind the wheel full of alcohol, drugs, the list goes on. And as soon as they get caught, as soon as they are pulled over by the police, the first thing they want to do is cry, the police is racist, or the police was cold, or the police was automatically rude to me, or, you know, the cuffs were too tight and I needed them to be loosened. You know, I didn't resist arrest. I just was trying to stand up for myself. Like, you would be surprised as to how many excuses these kind of individuals share with you when they don't want to be held accountable. And this can be really difficult, right? Let's say, for example, an example that you may be able to really relate to. Let's say, for example, you have a very narcissistic mother. She's always been cold, callous, unempathic. She doesn't care anything about you. Excuse me, guys. I should have brought some water. Goodness. Your mother, she's narcissistic. She doesn't care anything about you. She doesn't want to love and support you. So what happens? Because of her inability to stand and be your mother, you may find yourself in a severe place of depression. You may have tons of anxiety. You may have developed a phobia of some kind where it makes it really hard for you to get out and find a job. Maybe you are just so depressed and, feeling really hopeless and helpless that you just give up on life, right? And instead of your mother saying, this is my fault for not being a mother, for not being present in your life, for not being a loving, compassionate mother. Instead of mom just saying that, she flips the script, right? She distorts reality and says, you're lazy. You're unmotivated. You are not responsible. You are not accountable. There is a certain level of accountability that we all have to have as individuals, right? But the reality is this, that if you come from a household where you have a very complex kind of a mom, and maybe, excuse me, you have a very complex dad in addition to that, you're going to come out of that dynamic with some kind of problem, right? And so it is fair to a certain extent to look back at mom and dad and say, you guys weren't what I needed. You didn't love me, you didn't support me, you didn't encourage me. As a matter of fact, I felt like you were jealous, you were envious, I felt like you were unsupportive, I felt like you were absent as a parent. And now here I am as an adult, and I'm now dealing with those challenges that come from not having firm and sturdy and balanced parents. And that is okay for you to say, right? But with a parent that kind of falls back on a victim mentality, they may feel like you're pointing fingers at them and really blaming them, when the reality is they have been very detrimental to you. And so psychology calls this the victim complex. It's a persistent, consistent perception that they are the victim of something. There's also this idea of moral elitism. Have you ever heard of that? I'm going to put this in the chat box. There we go. Moral elitism. And basically what this means is this, that the person who constantly says that they are being victimized by everybody, that, you only went no contact because you didn't want to hear the truth, right? That's something a emotionally detached and immature parent would probably say, that that I am not the reason my son or my daughter went no contact. I have done everything I could. I've been present. I've been the best parent that I could think to be. There's no reason why. There's no reason why my son or my daughter has gone no contact with me. The reality may be that you've gone no contact with mom or dad because mom is highly critical. Mom is highly judgmental. She doesn't like any of the decisions that you have made. She's let your father get away with physical and sexual abuse of you as a child. She doesn't want to look at reality for what it is. She doesn't want to believe you, right? We can go down a whole list of reasons why adults decide to go no contact with their parents. If they decide to do so, that's their prerogative, right? That's what they believe is the best thing to do. But a parent who kind of has this mentality of victimization or victimhood, or this victim mentality, they're going to distort reality and say, you're the problem. You went no contact unnecessarily. When the reality is no, I went no contact because of all these variety of things that you've done, right? And so moral elitism says this. It says that I am actually up here. I am so superior. And I have this way about me that puts me up here. I am not. I am not the problem because I am up here. I am wonderful. I am great. I've tried everything. There's no blame in me. I haven't done anything wrong. I'm wonderful. It's you. You're the problem. And so moral elitism says that I am superior to you. It can be used as a defense mechanism. It can be used as a way to kind of deflect, right? And it can also be used as a way to kind of throw you off, because sometimes that person actually throws themselves into this moral elitist mentality, which says, if you come to me and you claim that I've done something to you, then during that encounter, I'm just going to rise above you. And I'm going to rise above you by saying things that makes you feel inferior, by making comments about things that makes you feel bad. And I know it makes you feel bad, by talking so fast to you and throwing around big terminology that your head spins. I'm going to do any and everything I have to do to rise above you. Why? Because I have this mentality of moral elitism, and that's the only power and control that I have right now. This kind of victim mentality in these individuals, unfortunately, it can be seen as a personality trait, the victim mentality, because the person actually becomes so warped and so distorted in their sense of reality. And they kind of, if you think of a mummy, they're kind of, wrapped around so many times, right? Their arms, their legs, their entire body, their head, their ears, everything is covered up, right? They're wrapped from head to toe. And so if you think about a person, excuse me, that has a victim mentality, it is like they are kind of wrapped up, kind of wrapped up in this way of being. And they've carved out a road that complements, if you will, their victim mentality. And that's the scary part, because they carve out a road that really makes them look like the victim, when the reality is they have, in so many ways, they have harmed everybody else. But they don't want to believe that. It's too much to kind of digest, right? So there's no constructive dialogue with these people at all. There's no constructive dialogue, because they don't want to hear you point out what they have done to you, right? There's no workaround. There's no compromise. They're not willing to compromise. And there's also no hope for a different outcome. Right, guys? There's literally no hope for a different outcome. I had a client so many years ago, I'm going to say maybe 4 years ago, somewhere around COVID time. And, he was just an interesting young man. He was 25 years of age, felt that he had the right to be angry with the entire world. And he was moody and irritable and judgmental and critical. And he would never come to therapy. He would never come to therapy in a way that was kind and open and having this mentality that there's hope in the world. He was just a really negative person. And one of the things that he ran with was he was mistreated, bullied, or harassed, mistreated, not very liked in society. And he took that. And I mean, when I say digested, he digested it. And he was just this angry, ticking time bomb because in his mind, there is no better outcome. There is no hope. There is no dialogue that needs to happen here, even in therapy. And there is nothing that can be done to change this. I am completely the victim, and everybody else is the problem, And the sad part about this is he wasn't open to therapy. He wasn't open to anything mom and dad had to say to him. He wasn't open to any kind of, tools that could have been used to make life easier on him. He completely slammed the door and said, I am not to blame for anything. The sad part also too about this case was he was absolutely the problem in a variety of cases that involved him being arrested, that involved him being harassed or bullied, stalked even. He was the common denominator in the whole situation, in multiple situations, to be more clear. And that's why he was in therapy with me. His probation officer sent him to therapy. He had to go. But he didn't see that as a me problem. He saw that as a you problem. You guys are the ones that have me in handcuffs. You are the guys, that have me on probation. You are the therapist. You're the one who's diagnosing me. It's you, as opposed to digesting the reality that I have caused a problem, that I was the one who abused my children. So these are the things that he did. I am the one who abused my children physically, sexually, and emotionally. I am the one who engaged in domestic violence and ran out the house, went to a bar, got drunk, wrecked my car, and ended up in jail, and that's how he got on probation. Okay. I am the one who tried to cut my bracelet off because I didn't want to be on probation and I thought I was better than everybody and I didn't have to listen to the rules. So he had a series of issues, right? But could he see it? Not at all. Not at all. And I'm going to put on the live chat. I'm sorry, guys. I forgot to put on that little thing on the side. But he just wanted to kind of wiggle his way out of accountability. And so that is how he did it, right? He kind of shut everybody down. There's no positive outcome. There was no accountability. There was no workaround on his part. It was an awful, awful situation. And unfortunately, this young man is in the penitentiary and he's going to be there for the next 15 years. So, guys, I'm sure people like this. You have parents like this. It is a very bad place to be in. Now, let me mention just a couple more things briefly. There's a concept in psychology. You guys have heard it. It's called masochism. And we can also call part of this the martyr complex. The martyr complex. And this is when somebody actually looks for trouble. They actually look for a situation that can put them in the position of victimhood. Does that make sense, guys? It's a term that identifies the martyr complex and the masochistic mindset. Those two terms highlights that there are people who actually enjoy becoming a victim. And they enjoy becoming a victim because, number one, it puts them in a position where everybody is looking at them. That's the martyr complex. It puts them in a position where they feel that they can rescue and get attention. They feel that they can do things for the greater good and get attention. They feel that if they put themselves in the middle of something like a protest, or, if they put themselves in the middle of something like, I'm going to go to my daughter's school and I'm going to demand that they do A, B, and C. Or let's say, for example, you have a sibling who, I don't know, talks to your children and they talk about you and against you to your children in order to win favor from your children, right? These are all mentalities, the martyr complex, the masochistic mentality, where the individual automatically puts themselves in a position of receiving some kind of backlash or receiving some kind of, what's the word that I'm looking for? Receiving some kind of punishment. And so that gives them the ability to push themselves into a box of I'm being harmed. I'm being talked about. I'm being arrested. I'm being dismissed. Somebody went no contact with me, right? They can put themselves into a situation that they distort and skew, and they could run with it and enjoy the attention that they're getting, right? The favor that they may be getting. They may even say, you know what, I put myself in jeopardy to help you. And that may or may not be the case. They just like the victim role, if that makes sense. And again, before I go to the chat box, some people enjoy being in this role. And this is just who they are. This is just who they are. I've seen clients over the course of my 16 years of experience who they'll come to therapy, they'll sit in front of me in therapy, they'll talk to me, but they'll never delve deep. Why? Because they don't want to go deeper. Because if they go deeper into what's bothering them or what's wrong with them or what they've done, then that means that they lose that cloak of victimization or victimhood. Because once you start talking, once they start revealing things about themselves, once they start being honest, then that gives the therapist an opportunity to say, well, what about this? And what about this? And what about that? And what about that? Why would you do that? That makes no sense. Why would you put yourself in that? Right? And some people don't like to be a part of that. So a lot of people tend to shut down. You guys know this. They stop talking, right? And they just kind of isolate and withdraw. Not all, but some. But this victim mentality is just a bad place to be. And especially when you're the one that they're pointing fingers to, and maybe all you're trying to do is tell them that they've hurt you, they've neglected you, they've minimized you, they haven't been very caring and compassionate towards you. You may be trying to get them to see that. Maybe you're going to dad, telling dad, you've never been a loving, caring, supportive father. Why can't you be a loving, supportive father? Dad may say, how dare you say I wasn't loving and supportive? He starts naming a variety of things that he feels that he's done for you. And then guess what he'll do? Once he's done with you, he'll go to his mother, call his 87-year-old mother, for example, and complain and cry and play the victim and act like everybody's hurting him. And why does this always happen to me? I was a fly on the wall, if you will. When I was an intern at a psychiatric hospital, I was really shadowing a psychiatrist when I first graduated from graduate school so many years ago. And I'll tell you this brief story, and then I will get to the chat box because you guys have some really good comments. I already see them from the corner of my eye. Excuse me, but this psychiatrist I would shadow. And so I would get behind a one-way mirror. And, you guys know what that is. You can't really see anybody behind the mirror. So I was able to hide back there, and different people were coming in for their therapy sessions. And I remember this guy, he said to the psychiatrist who was becoming his psychiatrist, this was his first appointment. And I remember him saying to the psychiatrist, I'm not going to tell you more than I need to tell you, because if I tell you everything, then you're going to know my buttons. You're going to know that I've been wrong to people. You're going to know that I've hurt people. You're going to know that I've said some things and I've done some things that aren't right. And I just want you to know up front, center stage, I'm putting it out here. And the psychiatrist was trying to get a word in, but he couldn't get a word in because this guy just kind of went on a rampage, if you will. And he's just talking and talking and talking. And he says, I'm going to put this out there, that I am the victim. I am the victim. I've always been the victim. People hurt me. People do mean things to me. People say things to me that's not right. Even people out in society, they cut me off at the grocery store. They cut me off and, in traffic. He says, nobody's nice to me. I've always been a victim. And this is a guy who refused to bathe, refused to buy new clothes, refused to keep up with his hygiene, refused to get a job, refused to take care of his wife and his children, refused to do anything productive. Why? Because he needed to be boxed into a category of helplessness, hopelessness, and self-pity. And it wasn't necessarily that he was this man where the world was just against him and he didn't know how to deal with it. We're not talking about that. This is a person who literally has a personality trait of victimhood, and we call it the victim complex. And the only way that he would, quote unquote, meet that criteria for a victim complex is for him to do all the things that he did to fit the description. Not bathe, not get a job, not worry about his hygiene, not get up on time every day, not going out to look for a job, not cleaning his car, not caring for his family. All of that automatically boxed him into a category of victimhood. And so it was a lot easier for him to walk around with a mopey facial expression, a flat affect. Remember, I talk about that all the time. When a person's face is flat, you don't see any emotion on it. He felt that he had the right to walk around with a flat affect, a sad demeanor. He looked like someone, he looked like someone who was homeless. He didn't do much to make himself fit into life because he wanted to have that, space in his world to play the victim, the dismissed, the hurt, and the harmed one. And that wasn't a very good thing. So guys, in this live chat tonight, I'm going to briefly talk about common behaviors of these individuals, because my question is, how do you manage a relationship with someone, even in a toxic family dynamic? How do you manage a relationship with another individual who clearly has caused everybody else pain, right? Including you. And yet they themselves claim that they are the victim, that they are being harmed, that they are being mistreated, sometimes even by you. So what do you do with that, right? And how do you deal with an emotionally immature and detached parent, maybe narcissistic, maybe psychopathic, we don't know, but how do you deal with a parent who claims that you are the biggest problem of their life, and yet you've decided to go no contact, or you've considered it because of the big challenge that she or he has been in your life, your parent, right? So we're going to talk about those common behaviors that you're likely to see in people who kind of grab onto that victim mentality and they run with it. We're going to talk just a little bit about some of the research, and then briefly I'm going to give you some information on how this impacts you, because it most definitely impacts you. If your mother, for example, has always been an abusive mother, right? A psychologically and emotionally abusive mother. If your father has always been this cold-hearted, callous person that doesn't care anything about you or the rest of his children, right? Or family, then it's going to impact you in some form and in some way, because you can't go to them. You can't develop a better relationship, and you certainly can't go to therapy with them, because they're going to play that victim role until they can't play it anymore. It truly is a personality trait. It's like they step into these shoes with the word victim on it, and they don't know how to come out of that. And quite frankly, some of them don't want to, So let's get to the meat of this, okay, guys? I see some new people in here. I see some of you, commenting already. Good to see that. Juby Joe, hello and welcome. Good to see you in tonight's live chat. Juby Joe says, much love to you, Tamara, and your family. How is your mom? Excellent topic. Thank you for your dedication to our YouTube community. You're welcome. And that's such a beautiful comment. Thank you so much for that. My mom is doing a lot better. Sometimes, the side of her body that was impacted by the stroke, which was the right side of her body. Because if you have a left hemisphere stroke, you're going to have a right side of your body kind of paralysis. She walks and does things really well, but sometimes it's just painful, So, yeah. So it's hard, because I hate to see her going through so much, but she's recovering. Thank you so much for asking, Juby Joe. Axe to Edge, hello and welcome, my friend. Good to have you, even when you can't be here. Always glad to see you. Hope you're doing okay. Sun Farrar, I hope I'm saying that correctly. Hello and welcome, my friend. Good to see you tonight. Tashay Baldwin, hello and welcome to the channel. I don't remember seeing you, so welcome. Actually, Jovial, hello and welcome. Yeah, so glad to be with you too. Good to be with you. I had a couple clients today, and then to be very honest, I was really getting nauseous and dizzy and feeling faint after my families today. And I was thinking, I think I'm just overworking myself this week. This week has been something. So I looked at the clock and it was 7:15. I'm like, oh my God, I have to get downstairs. I have to, see my YouTube fam, because as you're saying, actually jovial. It's wonderful, right? When we can connect and talk about these issues. Fairy girl, you know I love seeing you in the chat box. Hello and welcome. Good to see you in tonight's live chat. MS, always glad to see you as well. And thank you so much for that. Yeah, I'm sure you can. I think a lot of people can relate to these kind of family members, you know. There's a thank you so much, actually jovial. I really appreciate you. That's really kind of you. MS, I was trying to go back to your comment so I can answer that. I think we all can kind of relate to family members like this, you know, family members who are clearly the problem, and yet they turn things around and they point at you. I can personally relate to this, and I'll give you just a personal example to kind of fit some of these pieces together. I know a lot of you like my stories, so I'm going to throw one that's a personal one in here. So back when my late grandmother passed away, when she passed away in 2020, my family was not expecting it. My grandmother was like a hero. Okay. She was the meat, the bread, everything of our family. She was the firm foundation. You know, she was truly a matriarch, and everybody went to my grandmother, neighbors, friends, family, extended family, grandchildren. She has a ton of grandchildren, and 6 grandchildren. And between the 6 of us, she has grandchildren, minus myself and my younger sibling. But she had a really big family support system. And we would all go to my guy. That's what I would call her, my guy. And so when she passed away in 2020, it was a really, really hard thing that hit my family, because we weren't looking for this at all. We thought she was getting better. And mysteriously, she slipped into cardiac arrest and she passed away. And, you know, I ended up having to make the very real and raw decision, and talking with my mother and talking with my uncle, mainly with him out of the equation because he's the issue. So I'm going to bring that up in a second here to, you know, kind of pull these pieces together on this topic. But it was myself and my mom and my brother, my older brother, who had to make the decision to say no more pain, right? Because my grandmother had been under anesthesia. She had been under various pain medications to kind of help her deal with severe pneumonia. And it got to a place where the staff at the hospital were worried that she might slip into cardiac arrest, because they had seen this kind of what they call like a multi-system failure that was going on within her body. And so my brother and I, you know, we cried in the hospital, and we talked to each other, and then we called my mom, and finally we made the decision, we're going to have to just say no resuscitation, because the pain of having broken ribs is real for somebody who's 82 years of age. You know what I mean? So we made the decision to say no more pain. This is where we're going to say absolutely not. We're done. My uncle, however, and I you know, I loved my uncle. I thought he was great. But what ended up happening at the time is, speaking of victimhood, it turned into as soon as my grandmother was buried, after that long battle that we had with her, you know, it turned into kind of like a power struggle. And the power struggle was this, that he felt, I think, very much like a victim, you know, and I think he felt like, you know, he didn't have a say in certain things. You know, his mom kind of pushed him out of decision making last minute. You know, he didn't get the money or the estate that he thought he was going to benefit from her. And it kind of turned into this, I'm a victim. And the sad part about this story is my poor mother and my poor brother and I had to deal with his desire to be a part of the decision making, to be a part of the estate, to be a part of the granting of the inheritance. And when he realized that it wasn't what he thought, he became the enemy to the family in a sense. You know, he may not have wanted to, but that's what he became. And so you may have experienced this as well, that the person, in a way, and this is, I think, what my uncle kind of experienced, whether he realized it or not, in a way, that the victim mentality, it kind of sucks you in. And once you start believing that there's wrong being done to you, and when you believe that there's wrong being done to you without looking at the facts, without looking at, you know, the players of the situation, without looking at the role that you even play, right? Without looking at all of that, it can turn into a me against you. And so that person who in some way transforms into the victim, they do become a part of the mindset of you're against me. And now you're against me, and now you're against me, and now you're against me. And so what happens when you start feeling like people are against you? Well, then you start putting up your fist, because now you're ready to fight. Now you're ready to challenge. Now you're ready to demean. Now you're ready to go to whatever extent you need to go to, right? And that victim mentality not only affects that person, but then it also affects a variety of other people. And so that's what happened to my family during that time. And I just happened to be the therapist in the middle, standing there looking at everybody thinking, what is going on? You know what I mean? But the victim mentality, MS, within a family dynamic can be the ugliest, again, because we don't expect it. Number two, we don't want to victimize our family members, right? And number three, whoever suspects that a family member is going to feel like a victim of some kind and then distort things and turn things around and blame you. And in the end, the so-called self-pitied victim then becomes the victimizer, right? Because their behavior then causes victims. Isn't that interesting? It's a very, very sad reality, but it is something that happens all the time. All the time. T Mac, good to see you, my friend. Welcome back tonight. Jasmine, I haven't seen you in a while. Good to see you. Yes, you finally caught alive. So good to see you. The Good Glow, hello and welcome. Good to see you tonight. All right, we're going to keep moving because I'm far, far behind. Lore Fitz, Christina LZ, Kyra Knows, 144K, Patrick Black. Hello and welcome to all of you. So glad to see you. And Patrick Black, I love that you say, let's heal. I feel like my camera's still blurred, guys. Hold on, bear with me. Hold on, guys. Wait a minute. Okay, that might be a little bit better. Let me know if it isn't. It looks better to me. I love that you say let's heal, right? Because it's a situation. Every Friday and Saturday it's a dynamic. I'll call it a dynamic. It's a dynamic where we throw things in there that really needs to be talked about, right, guys? And in addition to that, I give you some personal stuff, not often, but most of the time. And then I also give you the professional side of this too. So you're right. It is like a healing process, right? Because we're talking about different angles of this whole thing. Christina LZ says, it does seem like there's something wrong with the picture, too far, or I don't know. Okay. Yeah. Hopefully it's better. All right, guys, let me continue to move. MS goes on and says, my mom's sister, 9 years older, than me, told me when I was 21 that she hated me because she thinks she suffered abuse by her mom. And if my mom hadn't left her behind, that I caused her pain. My mom was at the time committing violent crimes against her own children. She's now 71 years old and nothing has changed. I'm done trying to prove I'm worthy of her love. And my one bro I'm in low contact with doesn't understand. I'm going to leave it there. I totally understand, MS. That's a horrible dynamic, right? Because something's very wrong with that dynamic, right? It sounds like mom is kind of in this mindset and in this role that's not okay. And the same thing for your brother. Maybe your brother is also part of this complex dynamic that's not okay. So it's a very sad place to be in, isn't it, MS? And it's very complicated sometimes. Christina Smith, I'll get to see you in tonight's live chat. Bree 420, AMB, and Bossy Truthy 15. Good to see you guys. Welcome to tonight's live chat. Ellie Wynn and MNL Odell. Hello and welcome. Good to see you in tonight's live chat. Okay. Patrick Black 1 says, happened when I was a child. Had to watch my mother's babies when she was on drugs. Sad reality. Yeah, I understand. It sounds like parentification, right? It's okay to watch your siblings. It's okay to help out mom when she needs it. It's okay to go to your mom and say, I'm tired. I feel overwhelmed. That's okay too. But in most households, what happens, Patrick Black 1? You just go along with what mom's asking you to do. Watch her for 15 minutes while I run down to the corner store. Watch her for 2 hours while I go out on this date, right? And even if they don't verbalize it, you have those parents who sit on the couch. They get buried in this thing, okay? And I've had some parents like this in session over the years doing this, okay, guys, while I'm talking, Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that? Why? Because they feel that having a child or having many children possibly was a mistake. They weren't ready to grow up. They can't care for the children properly, or they don't have the maturity it takes to manage them, right? Or they want a mental break. And so sometimes they may not even ask you to watch kids or ask you to take care of your siblings. They're just going to sit somewhere and bury their head in the phone, and you're left to try to help your siblings, right? And so there's parentification. And of course, that's not calling out tired moms, right? Because when you're tired, and kids are a lot. Kids are a lot. So I get it. But, on the flip side of that, I don't get it, because you don't need to be parentified. You know what I mean? MNL Odell says, wow, I was babysitting by 10 years old. Things have changed. Yeah. Yeah, things have changed. Yeah. Okay. Let me keep moving, guys. Christina Smith says, if she truly loves and thinks well of her children, she would always want them to see her in a good light, respectable. Yeah. As a sloppy drunk. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that. Tashay Baldwin says, people have never been an addict or dealt with any kind of addiction, don't understand. Doesn't mean she doesn't love her kids. She told you because she knew she was wrong. Yeah, it doesn't always mean. Yeah, you're right about that. I'm glad you pointed that out. It doesn't always mean that, but what it does say is, I am weak, I'm vulnerable, and I am weak to this drug, and this drug comes before you, and that is the painful reality, right? It can't be neck and neck, right? Because you can't be you can't be a substance abuser. I don't want to say just drugs, because there's alcoholics, right? So you can't just be a substance abuser and that coincide with being a parent, right? Because guess what? The substances are going to come out on the winning side, and the kids are back here somewhere trying to figure out where's mom and dad, right? Because they're running off over there trying to find the next hit, the next high, the next alcoholic beverage, right? So it's a very complicated dynamic, if you ask me. Yeah. One of the reasons why I don't provide psychotherapy to individuals who have a substance abuse issue, because I'm not trained to pull together all those dynamic pieces. You know what I mean? It can get really complicated over time. Jessica J, hello and welcome. Good to see you. Welcome to tonight's live chat. Adila, hello, my dear. Welcome. Good to see you. Always love seeing you in the chat box. Signa Praxis Synergy, hello and welcome. Good to see you as well. Helene Webster, good to see you, and welcome to tonight's live chat. Okay, let me keep moving, guys, so we can get through some of this and stay on schedule. Hold on, guys, bear with me. Here we go. Jillian Minton, hello and welcome to the channel. Good to see you. Jillian Minton says, you have to know who you are, or they will expose your weakness. I don't remember what this was in reference to, but I am sure it's a very good point. I just don't remember what I was talking about at the time that you said that. I'm sorry. Yes, Doberman Mama, thank you so much for that. I just put them in a timeout, so they're gonna be locked out for the next 45 minutes. The reason I put people on a timeout is sometimes I don't know if it's a troll. Is it a troll, or is it a person who has a different point of view? And I don't want to automatically silence somebody who has a different point of view. So you'll see I put them in timeout. Thank you, Doberman Mama, for reporting the troll. I appreciate you. That's all the time I'm going to give them. You guys are there trying to learn. I agree with that. Okay. Axe to Edge says, I think some people believe that therapy is solely for venting, but remaining who they are. No change, no self-reflection. Yeah. No mindset. Yep. The mindset is what? I'm paying to be my emotional punching bag. I lost that last part, Axe to Edge, and that might have been just how I read it, but I agree very much with you. I agree very much. I see it all the time. Dr. Wright Life, hello and welcome. Good to see you. I'm just going to put your comment up here so people can have that point of view as well and kind of look at that. Okay, one more person, and then I'm going to go back into the content. The Good Glow says, my dad died when I was 15. I knew him, but we didn't really have a relationship. I remember spending weekends with him at times, but for some reason, I believe my mom didn't allow him access to us often. Wow. The Good Glow, I'm sorry for your loss. It sounds like a pretty disappointing kind of a situation, and the dynamics sound like it was a little bit complicated. Yeah. Let me just say with that as well, that if you, we're going to go back to the content on this one, but let me just say as well that if you find that you are in the middle of parental alienation, where a parent talks so negatively about another parent, right, or the other guardian, that it puts you in a mindset that is against that person. It puts you in a mindset that could make you dislike that person. It can put you in a mindset that causes you to get angry and become resentful towards that person. In a way, you are then a victim, right? Because you are now being victimized by lies, by deceit, by the parent who doesn't want you to love the other parent. So the Good Glow, it almost sounds like parental alienation to a certain point. All right, guys, let's get back into the content. So what are the common characteristics of these kind of people? This is what psychology says, and this is what I've said and what I've seen over the past 16 years of my career. And the first thing that you're likely to see in these individuals is self-pity. The minute they are caught, the minute they are called out, the minute they are blamed for something that they have done, they drop down into this pitiful mode, right? Of being. Some turn into children, some loudly scream and protest, some throw things and become violent. It's all deflection, right? Some threaten to take the kids away, some threaten to go no contact, some even have a disposition and an anger and a mentality that doesn't allow them to be open to correction or to change, right? Or to see things a different way. So they're grudge holders. That's the word I was looking for. They're grudge holders, right? They're blamers and they are deflectors. And so you're not going to get anywhere with these people. If you watch the body cam footage of police on YouTube, somebody watch it and tell me what you think. Because if you find an encounter where you clearly see that the person is in the wrong, right? Who has been pulled over. They are clearly in the wrong. My brother loves watching these things. That's the only reason I know what this is. But he was watching the other day, police body cam, where there was a woman, she didn't have her seatbelt on, and she had 4 kids in the back seat. Well, you can only really have as many kids in the car that you do seatbelts, right? We all know that. That's against the law. To have 3 kids in seatbelts and you have the 4th kid just hanging out in the middle, no seatbelt, nothing, a booster seat, nothing, And so the police pulled her over. She didn't have a seatbelt on. The kid was in the back, wasn't attached to a booster seat, nothing. And the chance of an accident, the chance of that child being harmed is high, right? And so, of course, the officer had the right to pull her over. But interestingly, she starts yelling and screaming when he asks for license and registration. She starts saying that, he's a racist. Then she starts saying, I hope your children die. Now she's trying to get a reaction from him. And she didn't even know if he has children or not. I hope your wife dies. She said to him, excuse me, I hope your wife dies. She doesn't even know if he has a wife, right? She was very angry and aggressive. And then he told her to step out of the car. She rolled the window up and refused to step out of the car. Finally, she was yanked out of the car, right? Because at this point, everybody is frustrated. She was yanked out of the car and thrown down on the ground, handcuffed. And when they stood her up, guess what she was doing? Crying, providing all kind of excuses. I just lost my job and everything's been stressful and I'm trying to be a good mom. And my husband just went back to his job and he's never home. And it turned into a whole therapy session. Okay. Self-pity. You will often find individuals who have a victim mentality. Sometimes they'll even act tough. They'll even act, what's the word I'm looking for? fearless until they realize that, no, you're in trouble. You're going to be held accountable. These individuals, they typically drop down into self-pity, crying, whining, sob stories, deflecting, yelling and screaming, becoming violent, threatening. The list just goes on, right? The other thing that tends to be a constant phenomenon with these individuals is learned and modeled behavior and passive aggressive behavior. So learned behavior is, I sat back and watched somebody else in my life behave this way. And so if they can get away with having a victim mentality and not taking responsibility, then I most certainly can get away with not having to take responsibility for the things that I do. So they've learned it over time. And modeled is the same thing, right? They've just been around somebody who has modeled what this looks like, and it's very powerful. If you see something over and over and over and it's done in front of your eyes, or you continue to hear stories about it, 9 times out of 10, you're going to take that behavior and you're going to try it on for yourself, unknowingly or knowingly. And so that's typically what seems to happen with these individuals. The other piece of this is a passive aggressive kind of a disposition. Individuals who cry boo-hoo, they are victimized, or they feel like they're victimized. They do things to other people. They create their own challenges. They create their own problems, their own consequences sometimes. These individuals will often be passive aggressive, huffing and puffing, slamming doors, trying to get your social or family group against you, pushing you into the black sheep role, ostracizing you, posting things on social media to get to you or to cause other people to talk negatively about you, right? Passive aggressive behaviors. Most of these individuals tend to be very weak in terms of how they think. They tend to be very immature. They tend to be very emotionally detached, and they do not want to take responsibility for their behaviors, right? So what do? They engage in a series of passive aggressive behaviors. These individuals also tend to be self-destructive. They actually put themselves in situations to get in trouble. They actually put themselves in positions to be harmed. Take my previous client, for example. She drank 2 bottles of vodka, added some beer on top of that, got behind the wheel of a car. The neighbor came out and had to rescue her children from her. What do you think that client did? Self-destructive behavior. You do not have to have 2 bottles of vodka. And you most certainly don't have to have 2 bottles of vodka and then break into the beer at the same time, right? And your kids are up, they're home with you, they're awake, they don't see you, they see you passed out on the floor. This is not an okay environment. But she was very upset with me for a series of sessions because she felt that I shouldn't have reported her to Child Protective Services. I told her she was lucky that I didn't report her to the police, right? Because I could have had the police search her home, do a wellness check, make sure those kids are okay. But, I felt that I did my duty to report it to Child Protective Services. Your children will be safe when they come out to investigate. And they were out within a matter of hours. But, this client for, a variety of sessions really did hold this grudge of, you did this to me. No, you did this to you. I'm just trying to help manage this to help you. Right. So, self-destructive behavior. There's no accountability. There's often pathological lying with these people. They deflect. They don't want to take responsibility. They don't want to be accountable. What do? You lie. You lie, turn things around. You distort and skew reality, right? There's perpetual. This is something that they tend to live out. Okay. There is perpetual self-pity. So not self-pity in one situation, not self-pity in this situation, but self-pity in a variety of situations. So we can call this global self-pity. This is self-pity across the board. I have self-pity when I get pulled over by the police, self-pity when my child's school told me I did something wrong, self-pity when someone calls me out and tells me I'm responsible, self-pity when I act a fool and get myself arrested. The list just goes on. But these individuals, they really do. They get sucked in by self-pity, and they literally play a part in their own pity party. This is just who they are. They're defensive sometimes. Envious and jealous. This is another thing. Mainly happens among siblings. Envy, jealousy, right? And when they're called out on it, you've always been envious of me, and I've known it because I feel it when you're around me. You're constantly looking me up and down. You're constantly making me feel loved and cared for. And I've told mom and dad, I've talked about this. What is your brother, for example, most likely going to say to you? That never happened. Oh, you're wrong. I never wanted to be you. As a matter of fact, I thought I was the better kid. I'm the one who didn't get in trouble, right? I never wanted to be you. So don't let that go to your head. You know, he may respond back in a confrontational way, but the reality is this, that you have seen that he kind of cloaks himself in self-pity. Everybody else is the problem. And he's jealous of you because of you. You know, he's angry with you because of you. If you would not have, I hear that a lot in therapy too, with some cases, you know, if you would not have made me angry, I would not have A, B, and C, you know. If you would not have said anything about this, I wouldn't have to feel like I'm being put on the spot, you know? So there's a lot of distortion of reality. There's also avoidance. Sometimes avoidance of relationships that's going to hold them accountable. Sometimes avoidance of people in the family or around them who can see through them, right? And sometimes there's avoidance by playing the pity role. You know, I'm the pitiful one who has been harmed, mistreated, and minimized. People are condescending to me. I don't get a break. Everybody dislikes me. The list goes on, right? And so they avoid the reality, which is that they are a problem, but they avoid that by playing the victim role. Now, there is some research that has been done by Scientific American. Let me put this in the chat box for you guys. So it's Scientific American. And the study was on, oh God, what is that study? I'm going to say it's the 4 dimensions of victimhood. Okay, you should be able to get this online. So it's through Scientific American, which is a journal for professionals. And the research was done on victimization. And the researchers found 4 dimensions, meaning that people tend to victimize themselves in a way that causes problems to other people. The first one was rumination. You guys know what rumination, and rumination is kind of like this obsessive track and wheel that your mind is on, right? And what happens when you ruminate? Well, you constantly think about the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. It's stuck. You know, it's kind of like that song in your head that you wake up with, you know, and you hear it playing in your ears and you try to change your channel and it won't go away, right? It's still there. You're still hearing Patti LaBelle, or you're still hearing Jessica Simpson in your head. You can't get that song out of your mind, right? And so rumination is kind of like that. The brain just goes around and around in circles. If you begin to victimize yourself, right? And the person says, I'm not responsible. You're the problem, not me. You're the problem, not me. If they ruminate over that, what happens? It becomes digested. It's a part of who they are, you know? Think about how it is when you're in a seminar or you're on my channel or somebody else's channel and you're learning things, you know, writing things down, looking at things with your eyes. It kind of causes your brain to digest what you are learning so you can have it later on. Well, that's what happens with rumination. And if the person who plays the victim all the time is ruminating over and over about being a victim, then they are going to believe that they are a victim. The other dimension is lack of empathy. They don't really care. And they don't really care that you've been harmed. This is all about them, not you. So there's a lack of empathy. There's also moral elitism. That's a part of this equation too. I'm superior. I'm here. You know, I don't have to reach down and shake your hand because you're way down there. I don't want to shake your hand because I'm way up here, you know. And the first thing was seeking recognition and validation of victimhood. You know, this is one dimension. This is the additional dimension. So there's 4 of them, but this is the other dimension. I'm seeking validation for my victimhood. I'm seeking some kind of confirmation that I have been victimized. And so I'm going to look at my cousin. I'm going to look at my work site. I'm going to look online. I'm going to Google some things because I need to validate that I have been a victim. And some people definitely do that. They go online, they look up diagnoses. They say, I have bipolar disorder, and they really have never been diagnosed. They'll say, I have borderline personality disorder. By whose definition? Google, because that's not really a diagnosis, right? So some people would just continue to play that victim role no matter what, you know? All right, guys, let me go through the impact on you briefly. I'm going to go back to the chat box, engage you, and then we're going to wrap up. Okay, guys, how does this impact you? You've been raised in a household where your sibling played the victim all the time. You've been raised under parents who were narcissistic and cold and callous. Maybe they had dark triad traits, right? So there was some sadism or some sadistic behaviors that you observed over the years, right? And you notice that there's not a lot of empathy for anybody else's thoughts and feelings in the family. So let's say you grew up under this. How does this impact you? Even if you're in a relationship with it now and you're trying to get out, or you want to get out, or you've gotten out, wherever you are in your journey, how does this impact you? Well, the first thing that research suggests, and I've seen this as well, is your reality gets distorted. And it gets severely distorted, right? Somebody who plays the victim all the time and cries all the time and whines all the time and gossips all the time and tells everybody that they are the victim all the time, it distorts your reality, right? Because a victim has to be able to pull you in, right? Cause some level of trust that what they're saying can be believed. And then guess what they do? They distort that reality. And they say, I'm the victim, you know? And as a therapist, I've been in places in my life where I've been in public standing in a line and I hear two people talking, you know, or maybe when I was a kid and my mom was getting the car worked on at an auto shop, I'd be sitting there with my mom, listening to the conversation that somebody else is having with my mom. Wherever I've been, I've heard people say things like, yeah, my son doesn't talk to me anymore. He wants nothing to do with me. He has nothing to do with me. My son just doesn't want anything to do with me. He doesn't like me, doesn't care about me, you know? And there have been times where I've sat on the opposite side of that and I've thought to myself, but there might be a reason. There might be a reason. There's most likely a reason, but you're not going to bring that up. You're just going to say, my son doesn't talk to me anymore. But the reality is this, that maybe there's a reason for that. You know, you're cold, you're callous, you're narcissistic, you're passive aggressive, the list goes on. But when a person plays the victim, the first thing they have to do is distort reality so it'll fit their narrative, you know? The other thing psychology highlights, and I've seen as well, is second guessing. They want you to second guess reality. They want you to second guess truth, right? Don't second guess them though, because they're the victim, but they want you to second guess everything else. You know what I mean? Invalidation, you know, the impact on you can make you just feel like your feelings and your thoughts are being invalidated, right? You go to your mom and you say, Mom, you've done this to me over the past 15 years, and I want nothing to do with the family because of this. You know, you never stood up for me. And your mom may deny it and say, no, that's not what. And you may say, it is what has happened. And it's impacted me. I'm actually in therapy over this. I'm trying to work through this, right? And what does your mom say? Oh, you know what? You've always been like that. There you have it, right? The invalidation, right? The inability to have a conversation. Remember, I said earlier, there's no constructive dialogue. It never happens. So there's not going to be constructive dialogue. There's not going to be any kind of workaround or compromise. And sadly, there's going to be invalidation. The other way that this kind of impacts you is you may find yourself kind of trapped in a mentality of helplessness, you know? How do I be heard? How do I be understood? How do I be loved and cared for when I can't get this person to just stop deflecting and focus on what the reality of the situation is, right? Or how do I get the love from my siblings or my parents when they say that they've never abused me, or they say they've never ganged up on me, or they say that the family was wonderful and there was never any real problems? I've been in sessions where some kids will tell me a terrible childhood that they had, and then the parent will come in and say, you got a wonderful childhood. You know, and it's like, okay, whose reality am I supposed to go with here? But sometimes there's this there's this mentality of helplessness and hopelessness that develops because you can't be understood and you can't be heard. Why? Because the person who has caused the trouble has victimized themselves, and in return, you have become the problem, right? Or maybe you're not seeing something right. That's another thing I've heard. Oh, she's not seeing this situation correctly. This is how it really happened, you know? You're going to feel emotional drain. I feel emotionally drained when I'm in sessions where I see a person just put on the hat of I'm the victim, you know? And sometimes their role in the situation is so very clear, but they won't pump the brakes and look at themselves. They don't want to. It's too painful, you know? So the true victim, the other person, ends up feeling like they are hanging over, you know, they feel drained, like an emotional vampire has drained the life out of them. And that's because there's kind of like this battle. You're trying to fight for the truth of the situation, and the other person is saying, no, my truth is the truth of the situation. I am the victim. Research also suggests, and I've seen it in my practice as well and career over the past few years, is you're often likely to experience a cycle of blame, self-blame. I caused this. I could have responded better. I could have done this better. How could I do that? How could I ask that question? So blame, resentment, and anger towards that other person who's victimizing themselves, right? And hostility. And hostility comes from not having an outlet for your emotions of anger. So it's complex, right, guys? And we could talk about this for days on end. But I think this is where we're going to pause it. We're going to hit the brakes. Tomorrow, you're going to want to come back because I'm going to add some more to this concept. And I think it's going to be something that you might like. For those of you who won't come back tomorrow, let me tell you, there are a few topics coming up next week, and I think that you're going to like them. So just stay tuned, and you will see those videos coming up really soon. Probably Tuesday and Wednesday if I can get both of them edited in time. But tell me what you think of this topic. Do you think that there's a way to kind of work around people who victimize themselves when they're causing trouble for everybody else? I'm going to be honest. There's no real therapeutic technique or therapeutic approach to help people like this. When you're in denial, you're in denial. When you deflect, you deflect. When you are incapable of being accountable, everything is kind of like, you're blocking all of reality. So what happens when you block all of reality? You don't learn, you don't shift, you don't grow, you don't heal, you're stuck in one place. And so pushing somebody like this into treatment hardly ever works. Pushing somebody into reading a book about self-pity or responsibility and accountability, that rarely works, right? What possibly makes an impact on people like this is cognitive behavior therapy. But there has to be some kind of incentive to get that person into therapy. I have to go to therapy to keep my marriage. I have to go to therapy to keep my sobriety. I have to go to therapy to continue to keep my job. Those are the only things that's likely to push your family member, somebody, whoever this person is. That's the only thing that's going to be able to push them into getting help, getting treatment, and taking responsibility for their behaviors. But it's a very difficult thing to try to deal with and to manage, All right, guys, let me go to the chat box so we can wrap up here in just a little bit. Air Force to Civilian Chronicles, hello and welcome. It's really good to see you back tonight. Air Force to Civilian Chronicles says, a relative of mine, a perpetual martyr, is also an aggressive victim bully because her parents didn't raise her. Because of this, she feels entitled to mistreat and abuse others. I love that you say this, and highly respect Dr. Ramani. I think she's using the correct terminology here when she says victim bully, because a lot of times, I'm going to throw this edge in here as well. And I actually had a client like this 2 years ago, and I had to cut off treatment because we weren't getting anywhere. But the person who claims that they are a victim, yes, you may be a victim of circumstance, but the sad part is somehow you lose sight of what that feels like. You lose sight of the pain that that victimization causes. You also lose sight of being rational, right? Because yes, you may be a victim, but now you're behaving in ways that actually makes you the very thing that you are afraid of. And you know, it's creating in you a bully, you know? So yes, you are a victim bully. And that's the sad part of that reality. The client that I had a couple years ago, 2 years ago, you know, she was getting bullied in high school. Okay. She was tired of being bullied in high school. She was then working a summer job. She was tired of being bullied at her summer job, which I swear she was doing things that triggered all of this. But she claimed she was the innocent one. So she was being bullied in a variety of settings. Then she went home and the next door neighbor moved out. Somebody else bought the home and she had issues with them. And I remember saying to her, the common denominator is you. The common denominator is you. And what she said to me was this. She says, Miss Tamara, I just want people, even if they haven't hurt me, I just want people to hurt. I want people to hurt because I've been hurt. I want people to feel what I have been feeling over the past 17 years of my life. She was 17. She says, I want people to hurt like I hurt. So there are times when I will bully. I could have fell on the floor out of my chair, to be very honest, and very little surprises me. But that was a very surprising reality. And as a matter of fact, I probably should have just diagnosed her as a narcissist in the first place, because that's probably what she was going to become over time. I want to hurt so people can feel what I have felt. Yeah, that's very rational. Okay. All right, guys, let me keep moving. So Air Force to Civilian Chronicles, I totally get you. Actually, Jovial, thank you so much for that. I'm glad you're hearing the truth. That's amazing. And that's wonderful. That's wonderful. MS says it's about learning not to take the bait from these kinds of people. Frankly, I just don't want to communicate with these people anymore. This kind of behavior gets old and I'd rather not be around them. I don't blame you. I totally understand. I totally understand. Jessica J, thank you for letting me know. If you see another troll, let me know. I will go right to them and hit the there's a button on here. Okay, guys, let me see if I can find it. There's a button on here that says ban user and delete their comments. And I've used it a handful of times. So let me know, okay? Okay, let me keep moving so we can get through some of this. Space Monk Tarot, here we go. Hello and welcome. Good to see you back tonight. Space Monk Tarot says, how does playing the victim manipulate outcomes? Well, let me give you an example. Think about how kids are. And I counsel a lot of kids. So it's like, technically, I feel like I'm a parent to all of those kids. So I feel the burden and I feel the outcome. I feel the outcome of what it's like to play the victim. So think about kids who do things they know they're not supposed to do. They do it anyway. And then when they're caught, they say, oh my God, I can't believe you're doing this because you're taking my Wii. You're taking my sleepovers away. You're taking my cell phone. You're taking my summer away. You're not being flexible anymore. I have to go to bed at 8 o'clock. You know, you're taking all of these things away from me. How could you do that? And sometimes I'll look at the kid and I'll say, because you've done A, B, and C. There's a consequence for every behavior. There is a consequence. And that goes for all human beings, even Miss Tamara, right? You speed on the road, you speed by a patrol car, you're going to get a ticket. You know, you go to the grocery store and you fight with somebody in there, you're going to get kicked out of the store or banned, right? You have an affair, you're going to be a divorcee in a little bit. So there's a consequence to every behavior. That's the reason why our jails are overflowing. Not all of them, but some of them. You know, we have, excuse me, We have some mentality in the jails. I used to work in one as a therapist, or I would visit one and counsel and be the outside therapist that would come in and, just to sit with some of the people who are incarcerated, to think that they could possibly feel that the system is against them is shocking. After you're the one who has sold those drugs, you're the one who has been prostituting, you're the one who gave those minors access to alcohol, you're the one who committed the murder, robbed the bank, stole the car. There is a consequence for every behavior. So how does playing the victim manipulate outcomes? Changes at least their view of themselves, right? Sometimes it also can change the view of somebody else. You've seen people who beg, please don't take me to jail, please don't take me to jail, I have a child at home, I'm going to lose my job, right? Those parents that I've had in my past, when I've worked in schools or when I've worked in juvenile detention centers, sometimes I used to have to, I don't now, but I used to have to report to the parents that I'm going to be the one making a Child Protective Services complaint. And here's what's going to be in my complaint. So if you get a phone call, you're probably going to want to answer that. And, I've had parents say to me, please don't report me. I know I punched her. I know I should have done it. I know I shouldn't have beat her. I know she has a bruise on her face. I know, but I'm going to lose my job if you report me. I don't know what you want me to do, right? Say it's okay. Take your kid home. She has a black eye and some whelps on her. Everything will be fine. No. So there's a consequence to every behavior, and playing the victim role has a way of distorting everybody's view of the situation, right? How do you feel? I'm going to pose this question just kind of get you to think. How do you feel when you see somebody screaming bloody murder, right? Somebody's screaming, somebody's running, somebody's saying, help me, right? What's the first thing you're going to think? They need help, right? They're being victimized in some way. The reality may be that they are being thrown on the ground and handcuffed by the police because they have been very disrespectful. They spit on an officer. They called them all kind of names, threatened to kill their family members, their wives, their husbands, whatever. And the consequence is we're now going to yank you out of the car and put you on the ground and handcuff you. And, maybe you're a passerby and you're hearing screaming and hearing them say, help me, or hearing them say, this is wrong, I didn't do anything. And they did do something. So playing the victim role is a psychological maneuver. It's a psychological maneuver. And the intent is not just to change their version of themselves in their own eyes, but it's to change how you see them. Does that make sense? Yeah. It's complex, guys. Jermaine, that was a good question, by the way. Jermaine, hello and welcome. Good to see you in tonight's live chat. Jermaine says, I can't say anything like that to my dad. He starts screaming at me just for disagreeing with him. Yeah. Sometimes you just can't disagree. No. Air Force to Civilian Chronicle says, lying, manipulation, gaslighting, triangulation, bullying, and rage are how those with perpetual victimhood go untreated behave. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. Sometimes the loudest person in the room is the biggest liar. Sometimes the loudest person in the room is the biggest abuser, the biggest alcoholic, the biggest drug dealer, right? And I've seen this in my profession, and I think, why are you screaming? Oh my God. And, and there's been times where, especially when I worked in a, more of a public sector of mental health, where I was a clinician in an outpatient clinic or at a community center, when I would be in one of those sessions, with a client that maybe just walked off the street and needed a therapist, I'm getting their information, and they're telling me their whole life story. And, what I realized in this individual is there's lying. You've already told me about 12 lies, I know you don't expect me to feel sorry for you at this point because you've just told me 12 lies, but this is who they are. So they lie, they cheat, they steal, they manipulate. And yes, they do gaslight. That's a common misused word in society today, but they do gaslight. They try to minimize your reality so they can exaggerate their own lies, right? If I get you to believe that you are crazy, if I get you to believe that you are not seeing this correctly, if I get you to see that you're the one with the problem, life is great for me, So this is who they are. A&B says, my mom is addicted to being the victim and being victimized. And she loves to talk about what is done to her and how people have treated her. so that she cannot move forward. Yeah, it's a stuck place, right? You stay in that victim mentality. All you do is ruminate about what people have done to you. You're going to be stuck, right? Yeah. Okay, let me make sure I haven't skipped over anybody. Sylvie, good to see you. Hope you're doing well today as well. Oh my God, saying two things in one, guys. It's time for me to sign off. It's good to see you, Sylvie. All right, let me keep moving. Okay, I'm gonna call you Cat because I can't make that out. I'm gonna call you Cat. I don't remember saying that. Did I say that, guys? I may have. I don't know. I don't know what I meant by that if I said it. I can't remember, guys. I'm sorry. But some people do feel that they have the right to walk around with a certain disposition, you know? So do people have a right to walk around with a certain disposition? Yes. But some people do it for attention seeking. So let's say I did say that, he felt the right to go around with a flat affect. That's possible. I'm not going to smile at anybody. I'm not going to grimace. I'm not going to do much with my facial expressions. I'm just going to give people a blank look, Jessica J. I know Mary Michelle. I'm so sorry. Somebody let me know if she's still in the chat because I did put her in timeout and I'm pretty far up in the comments. So let me know if you need me to get on top of that. Laura Fitz says it's impossible and exhausting to form a relationship with the poor me individuals. Yes, it is. It is. It really is. Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. And it's difficult. Excuse me. And it's difficult. It's difficult to not only have a connection with them, but it's also difficult to have a genuine connection, right? Because they feel victimized by everything that is done to them, right? So even you trying to connect with them, they may put up a brick wall very quickly because they don't trust you anyway. You know what I mean? I've seen people like that as well. So Papa Peaceful, hello and welcome. Good to see you in tonight's live chat. Welcome to the channel. Thank you so much. Oh, thank you so much for that. I love that. That's so humbling. I appreciate you for that. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, thank you, Jessica J. I appreciate you. Thank you. Christina Smith says negative attention is better than none at all. Agree. Keith B, hello and welcome. Good to see you in tonight's live chat. Okay. Yeah, I do see you guys talking about Mary Michelle. I'll be more on top of that, guys, next time. Janine MacArthur, hello and welcome, Miss Janine. Good to see you tonight. She says, my mom always reminds me of everything I've done wrong, but never admits her faults unless she has to. Thanks for sharing your wisdom, your awesome videos, and good advice. Love your channel. Thank you so much for that. And so glad that you feel that way and you're benefiting. That's awesome. Tammy Nicely, hello and welcome. Always glad that you can join us and say hello. Hope you're doing okay. I know I see you say I've been going through so much, which is why I haven't been present as often. I totally understand. It's going to be okay as long as you continue to keep fighting. Tammy Nicely. I told one of my clients today, I said, I can't promise you that everything is going to be okay, but I can say that everything is going to most likely be okay as long as you keep fighting. And keep fighting means keep getting up every day, keep doing what you need to do, keep being hopeful, look for hope, look for encouragement, look for positivity, look for people to put a smile on your face. Sometimes when I leave my office, I lock the door for the day. I leave the building, I get in my car. I have clients, the ones that have really impacted me during my day. I have their lives play over in my mind. I also think about their behaviors and some of the needs that they may have just recently developed, right? Or, maybe a situation happening right now that's going to derail their healthy development. Whatever the case may be, there are times that, I will be in public after work. I'll go to a grocery store, I'll go to Target, I'll go grab some things, from somewhere else. And sometimes that baby sitting in a shopping cart looking at me is what I need, just to bring me back around to the idea that it's going to be okay. That sitting next to my mom when I get home and watching Judge Judy with her and my brother, that's what I need. So like continuing, Tammy Nicely, to look for those things that give you life. And it may not give you full life, but you can add it to the equation. I'm going to add this, I'm going to add that, I'm going to reach for that, I'm going to reach for that sun over there, reach for that flower over there, I'm going to reach for that puppy over there that's so cute. So hang in there, Tammy Nicely. I don't want to preach to you, but hang in there. Okay, guys, I would love to continue to be on here with you, but man, I'm behind. Okay, Sakina, we got to wrap up, guys. Sakina, hello and welcome. Welcome to the channel. So glad to have you join us. Glad to see you. Okay, I think I got everybody at least once. I think. And I promise that tomorrow I will continue to try to get most of you. Wait, did I miss somebody? Hold on, guys. Bear with me, okay? Oh, I thought I did. Bree420 wanted to thank you for gifting somebody with a membership. Thank you so much for that. That is so sweet of you. Thank you for the super chat as well, Bree. And I think you gifted a few people tonight. Thank you for the super chat as well. And my friend Smita, good to see you as well. I don't want to miss you. Hello and welcome. We're going to sign off here in just a little bit. Donna Lee, I can't forget you. Hello and welcome. Good to see you in tonight's live chat. I'm just scrolling through briefly. Yeah, I would love to get all of you more than once. T-Mac, let me read this one. T-Mac says, my brother holds a lot of resentment towards me because my mother used to abuse him. He tries to take it out on me. And when I fight back, he will self-harm himself so people can feel sorry for him. I wouldn't be surprised. Sometimes that's part of the equation, even for therapists. If somebody comes to a session and says, look at what I did to myself last night. Now we have to try to figure out, okay, is this a maneuver for attention? Is this a cry for help? Is this a person who needs a loving, compassionate person to give them that love and compassion in return? Right? Is there something under the surface that's going on that is not just on their arm? You know what I mean? And so it's a really complicated position to be in. So it could be attention seeking, T-Mac. It could also be an indication of a much deeper problem as well. But it's very complicated when it happens, isn't it? Yeah. See Mobley's Golden Era Experience. Oh my goodness, that was a long one. Hello and welcome to the channel. Good to see you. Good to have you. I'm just going to leave your comment up there for people to see. Okay, I need one last person before we sign off. James McDonald, thank you so much for the super chat. I appreciate you and glad you joined in. I am going to end on, thank you so much for that. Also, by the way, I hope you're doing well, James. I'm going to end on, oh, I do see Mary. So yeah, she's gone. So you shouldn't see her in the replay. Okay, guys. One more comment. Here we go. You're my last one, my friend Smita. My friend Smita says, I find it so discouraging to be around perpetual victims. I find it so discouraging to be around perpetual victims. Let me just comment on that briefly. I think that's a good thing that happens because you can be around people who are just hurting, right? And my mom used to say this quote all the time. She says, hurt people need people, right? And sometimes people who need people are the most blessed of all, or the greatest of all. Something like that she used to say to me and my siblings growing up. And when I finally got of age, I thought, you know what, that makes a lot of sense. It is okay to say, here's my issues, and I bring them to the table. Here's my problem. Can you talk to me? Here's where I'm lonely. Here's where my parent did this. Here's where my cousin did this. Here's what happened to me. That's why sometimes I self-disclose, so you'll understand. and kind of feel okay with the reality that we all go through life, right? And none of us are going to escape this life, even when we have a bunch of degrees on the wall. So in this mindset, my friend Shmina, I agree. It's okay to be around people who are hurting and have issues. Sometimes that can be a wonderful unity. You see how it is for the chat box on this channel. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. That's why we've become the most popular channel on the weekend that goes live in the topic of psychology, on the channel and on YouTube. So that's a wonderful thing. But if you are sitting around people, and you guys probably are going to agree with this, you sit around people who are mad at the world, says things about bombing places and killing people and murdering people and hurting people and fighting, and you're talking about politics and what you don't like and what you can't stand and what you hate, right? Or I was abused, I was neglected, I have issues, but then you're causing issues for everybody else, right? You're a individual that engages in disorderly conduct wherever you go. There's just problems that follows victims or those with victim mentalities. Those are the people that you do want to get away from, right? They sink you. They distort your reality. They change your mind about yourself and your life. And it's just a rut, right, guys? So my friend Shmina, you're right about that, guys. So glad you could be with me tonight. Thank you so much for being live with me. I will be back tomorrow. Stay tuned because I'm going to post in the community section what we're going to talk about tomorrow. Hope you have a safe, wonderful Friday. See you soon, guys. Hopefully see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.